Dear brothers and sisters, you are welcome once again to another presentation where we would like to delve into teaching and learning activities. In our previous presentations, we dealt with the concept of a lesson plan. Then within that, we tried to look at some important components of the lesson plan. One of them was the learning objective. We said that learning objectives are statements that describe what the teacher intends to achieve. What the teacher intends to achieve. Now that we are able to write this, we would like today to go into the classroom and teach. Therefore, we would like to look at teaching and learning activities. So teaching and learning activities are whatever engagement that takes place in the classroom. So in our discussion, we will be guided by some objectives. By the end of the presentation, I expect participants to be able to explain the meaning of teaching and learning activities and their importance. Secondly, they will be able to identify classroom activities used at different stages of lessons. And finally, you will be able to apply teaching and learning activities effectively to enhance engagement and retention. By way of introduction, I must say that teaching and learning activities are essential to effective instruction. They transform learning from passive to active, so that the students, the participants, become active players in the teaching and learning process. Also, teaching and learning activities promote student engagement and knowledge construction. You know, today we talk more and more about knowledge construction more than imparting knowledge, more than putting knowledge into it. And so learning, teaching and learning activities help the learners to make sense of knowledge and be able to form meaning out of the engagement that takes place in the classroom. Right. Finally, I can say also that teaching and learning activities supports inclusivity, motivation, and deeper understanding. And so when we engage in effective teaching and learning activities, there is a whole lot that we bring into the process of teaching. And in our case, the process of catechesis. So let's ask ourselves, what is the meaning of teaching and learning activities at all? So these are what the teachers use, the tools teachers use in order to achieve their learning outcome or to achieve their objective. They encourage students, okay, to be actively engaged in order to acquire knowledge. So when talking about teaching and learning activities, it's the role that the activities we bring into the classroom play in order that students are able to achieve attain knowledge, attain skills, and attitudes. So teaching and learning activities really makes our classroom a student-centered learning, or if you like, a human-centered learning. This is where the work is not done by the achievement activists. The work is not done by the teacher, by the instructor, but the bulk of the work is done by the experience. This is what we mean by a learner centered or a student centered. We also can say that teaching and learning activity increase motivation, participation. And so if we intend to teach and make the classroom an activity base, a lot of engagement, it helps the children to be part and parcel of the teaching and learning process. Then we become active participants, and this brings a lot of motivation, a lot of motivation. And so we ask ourselves, are there some benefits? Are there some benefits in the use of teaching and learning activities? Yes, we have. The first of these benefits is the improvement of concentration. Whenever students learn, are engaged actively, they are always ready, focused, and are able to go along with the process learning. And so it makes them focus and they concentrate on whatever is going on in the class. Right? We can also say that it encourages better study planning. When the children are engaged, it gives them some kind of encouragement and it helps in planning their studies. Don't forget, we do it, and when we teach them, it's not all, right? They go back into their studies in order to do further studies. So it helps and encourage better study planning for the learner themselves. We can also say that one of the benefits we draw from these activities is reduces anxiety during assessment. When the learners are fully engaged, and it is time for you to assess them, it's time for them to write assignments, it is time for you to engage them to find out how far they have gone with the learning project. It doesn't give them much stress. It removes some kind of anxiety from them, and they are easy. They find it easy to go with the assessment. You all know that exam brings a lot of anxiety. People feel uncomfortable with that, you know. And so when learners are fully engaged, it reduces stress. Then lastly, we can also say that teaching and learning activities improve academic performance. And that follows from the fact that once the activities are very well carried out, it helps for understanding. And where there is understanding, improvements in academic performance is actual. Is actual. And so teaching and learning activities, when we are planning these things, there are certain things that should be at the back of our mind when we have activities that we plan. One of them that we shouldn't forget is the learner's needs. Okay? Whatever we plan to do with the learners, with the activities, let us ensure that it answers some of their needs. What do the activities want to give? What is it? Whatever we are going to tell them, is it going to be a solution to them to the certain thing? And that is why we just have a lot to do before we go to the project. There are so many needs that we have, and it is important to make sure that whatever we are doing answers those needs. So the children become the center. Anyone we have, well, it is important also to consider if there are some physical or visual or even mental challenges, disabilities that will make it difficult for the learners to follow with the activities. It is important to consider that so that you will be able to vary your activity or know what type of activity you will do then. Right? Then also, whatever activity you would like to plan, that must be one which encourages participation of the field. Okay? We may do things that will not engage all of them, and that is no problem because if at the end of the day prioritizes some of the students over the others. And so it is important to see whether it is something that all the learners will be able to take part in. Today in our schools, sometimes only a few of them have the chance to go and play soccer. Okay, that is one of the things I praise Cameroon, the schools in Cameroon. You can go to a school and they have about 3 football fields. And so when it is time for sports, all the students have the chance to do that. All of that is done only the 22 players can be playing at the same time. The whole school, you know. So whatever plan we have, we try as much as possible that all the students, all the learners are encouraged to participate here. Then we can also add that it is important to value the various and multiple viewpoints of all the students in the class. So let's move on to ask why are classroom activities important? Why are they important? First of all, classroom activities develop essential academic and social skills. You know, an activity that engages learners means that it brings them together. There are most activities that we engage our students in that entails communication, entails kind of how human and human relate to each other. Okay. So within those activities, there are some skills that are developed to be communication skills, to be social skills. So many of them that the children will come to develop. Then also we can say that um, these activities prepare the students for the real world environment. What do you mean by real world environment? Whatever we learn in class, it's not for the sake of it. It is a preparation to go and live in the world as the truth. And so, whatever activity we engage them in does not make them to be what we want them to be, then something is lacking. Something is lacking. When at the end of the statistical programs we have, and we are unable to achieve people that display Christian believing, to be kind in society, to be compassionate in society, then something is wrong. So whatever thing we do, it is important that we keep in mind that the activities prepare them for the world, for the life. It prepares them for life. We can also say that these activities support active and meaningful learning. Active, meaningful learning for our children. And if it were not so, when would we at all engage our children in it? Because the activities are actually experiences that we create that help them to live that reality before they go out of the classroom. And so they become tools for learning. They become tools for learning. We can also say that um, they are important because they lead to collaboration and active learning. They lead to collaboration and active learning. Some of the activities that we have for our children are meant to help them to work together, to be able to work together, and not only to work together, but to live, right? That's the live together. We can also say that it builds team and communication skills. Many times the problem we have in our work today is that you will meet people who can work very well when they are on their own. But when you put two or three together and give them a project to work on, it becomes challenging. And so classroom activities help in building teams and how the young people will be able to put themselves together to solve real world challenges. Real world challenges. Then let's ask ourselves when planning these activities, are there some questions that could guide us? Certain things that will guide our planning. And one of them that will guide our planning is that the activities must align with the objectives we have set for ourselves. Otherwise, the activities will only be a play or will be a time of entertainment in the classroom. So by aligning with the objectives we need, any step that we have to even though it may seem so enjoyable to the student, to the activity, it should be leading to achieving the objectives we set for ourselves for that class. Then also the activities must develop required skills and that everything that happens in the classroom should lead to some kind of skills and knowledge that we intend the young people acquire. And by so doing, we are able to prepare them for life. Okay. Are we preparing them to be kind? Are we preparing them to be compassionate? Are we preparing them to be forgiving? Are we preparing them so that they are able to be critical in thinking or have some kind of knowledge? These things should definitely lead us to acquiring them. Then we should also make sure that the activities will require practice. Then at the end of the practice, there should be a kind of impact. Okay? To be that of providing some practice. Children doing something, being engaged, practical. And at the end of the day, it should be a feedback from that as the example. Right? Great. Then also, it is important to be mindful of time management. Time management. We must be able to know that our class presentations are within a concept, and therefore we need to use the time well. Sometimes we may have activities, and by the time we know it, the whole class is over and we have not achieve what we wanted to do that day. So time management is also key. There are some critical questions that can be at the back. And when I'm talking about this, don't forget, we are not talking about only um, activities as in playing games, quizzes, and all that. We are talking about even when we are teaching, when we have a topic that we do. And so when we have such an activity, we should ask ourselves the following question. For example, when we are teaching, you ask yourself, how am I going to explain the topic? How am I going to do it to the understanding of my readers, my subject? Okay. Then another question will be, how will I engage them? How would I bring them into the class, into the activities? Am I asking them to read? Am I going to ask them to demonstrate? Am I going to ask them to take notes? Am I going to ask them to read a passage? So it is important to ask yourself, how are the students going to be engaged? What will the students be doing? What will they be doing? Then you ask, what real life examples are there that I can add to my explanation to make it meaningful? Okay? If I am teaching about giving, I'm teaching about giving, then where have some generous people in the society, some philanthropists who have donated so and so to society. Those can be examples that are picked from here and there. And they should be appropriate example that will go a long way to explain what I intend to teach. Then, within a particular topic I want to teach, it is important to ask myself, what concrete activities, real activities, am I going to apply? Is it a puzzle? Is it a quiz I'm going to use? Am I going to use a debate and all that to help understanding? So those are some critical questions that we need to keep in mind and ask ourselves as we go along teaching. Now, when we enter the classroom, whatever goes on in the classroom can be grouped under three main categories of stages. When we enter the classroom, we talk about introduction of lessons. We talk about presentation of the lesson and conclusion. These three elements very important when we are constructing what to do in the classroom, and it is important to have a look at how they go first. Let's look at lesson introduction. Lesson introduction. There can be so many ways of introducing our lesson, but let's discuss many of them. But before we discuss them, we know that um, the introduction sets the tone for the lesson that day. Okay, the beginning of that lesson gives uh, carries the children in a certain way to bring them in line, preparing them for the discussion of the topic. And that's what we say, it sets the tone for the lesson that day. Secondly, um, it focuses the learner's attention on what is going to happen. It does not keep the children wondering about not knowing what the teacher is going to say today, and then we just throw the topic there. No, it helps to focus their attention about what is going to happen. Then we can also say that it introduces the learning outcomes, the objective, what the teacher wants to achieve within the classroom. This is the time that the teacher beautifully mentioned some of those that today we are going to look at the sacrament of baptism, for example. Okay. And so when at the end of this lesson, I will expect that we will be able to identify some symbols that are used for baptism. Saying all these things to the children helps them to make a mental picture of some of the things that we are going to talk about. And therefore, once you get there, they begin to connect and put the pieces together. Lastly, the introduction prepares students to prepare them psychologically for the lesson. They prepare them for the lesson. Now, let's look at some techniques that teachers may use to introduce the lessons. There are so many that I know, but I would like us to discuss this. One of them is to review the previous lesson. You review what was taught before. Many times our lessons, our topics are connected to each other. So we will try to highlight some of the concepts that were teachers in the previous lesson. And here care should be taken not to spend the whole of the time talking about the previous lesson as if you are giving another class. No. Highlight the key of them, then connect it with current topic that will be discussed. Some people are so creative that they like to do the song. They have a song that is related to the topic, and that song will be sung by beautifully designed to introduce the lesson. You want to talk about the attributes of God, for example, and you know this song. Yeah, yeah, will feel. Yeah, maybe your time, yeah, maybe we will believe we will all those we all those children we will believe all the way you know, to it, God is here, God is at home, God is everywhere. And so, if you see, he sees you, he hears about it, then he will respond it. You know, when you finish, you use this to introduce some of the attributes of God, and some of you will be able to tell me that God is everywhere. Okay? Omnipresent, right? Omniscient, he knows everything. So you'll be able to connect and vividly introduce the name of us. Right. Somebody would like to use short stories. In those stories or stories picked from the news and things that happen around us and to run connected to the the topic for is actually working. Okay. Some teachers would like to brainstorm. You put the question, what idea do you have about this? What do you know about it? And give the experience chance, time to say that and being a teacher who has also prepared himself, you can pick on some of the items that the learners are being asked and then use it to link the topic for the day and then you start. But that is how we do it. The last one is doing the lesson. Some people would like to give the learners some tips. Okay, they bring something like a text of how the class is going to be, right? This is where some people would like to say something about what they would like to achieve that day, the objectives for the day. They may like to have a little gist about what will be taught, to put into the spirit of what they are doing today. Right. So these are some techniques. There are so many of them. You can go and look for some of them that can be of help to you. The list is not exhaustive. Um, Now let's move to, we have done lesson introduction. We move on to lesson presentation. Remember, I spoke about 3 main stages we can divide our lessons. Lesson introduction, lesson presentation, and lesson complete. Now we are on the second lesson presentation. So in the lesson presentation, we know that this is where we are going to teach the concepts of the program. The introduction is only an overview of what will happen. This lesson presentation is when we are going to do the proper teaching of the concept. Right? It also uses so many techniques here, or so many, there can be so many approaches we will need in teaching. It will be a lecture where the teacher stands and speaks to the children about what the topic is, explain things to them, can have class discussion where you prepare the forum and then you share the opinion about what that topic is. You can engage in today on YouTube. There are so many games that are used. Sometimes even engage them in debates. And so we have um, a whole lot of approaches during the lesson presentation. And this is what encourages understanding and participation. Some techniques or skills that we may uh, employ, and one of them is confidence. The learners should see confidence in you that you are a master of the topic you are handling. Okay? Sometimes when the children do not see this, they can easily get distracted. Sometimes that is why you see them talking, knocking one, somebody um, distracting themselves here and there and doing other things other than what we expected. So it is important that the teacher looks confident, and confidence comes from preparation. We have to read around the topic, read and read around the topic, and to get the right things done before we come class. Secondly, energy and enthusiasm must be very high. Let the students see that you are on time. Sometimes we look down, and when you look down, it affects what we see and what we do in the class. But of course, when we are sick, we are sick. But then, other than that, it is important for us to let the learners feel the energy level that we have, the energy level that we have. Then the third one is the teacher or the practices should be clear and the voice should be fine. Clear. Whatever we can say, let us say it loud and clear so that what we say will not miss be misunderstood. Or perhaps we need the students struggling with what did he say, what did he say, and all kinds of things. So let us say what we want to say for the learners to hear. We should also make sure we have effective when we fix and we are looking at where we don't focus on the children, let them feel that the teacher is talking to me. The teacher is engaging me, is communicating with me. Sometimes we didn't go near the person, one of them, and speak to them. Okay, let us try as much as possible to build eye contact. Speak with eye contact. Another thing is it is important to use gestures and some kind of movements in the class that would help the young people get the picture to explain. Sometimes these gestures act to what we say. Also listening to one public speaking in coach. And this is what we say that it is rather unfortunate that some people only have the others. We have more than the box. It communicates and speaks. And body language plays a role in this. You want to show a feeling of emotion, do it, let me see. You want to play a certain part that you tell them what you want to say. Sometimes you may not even speak. You may use body language. It should be very. Then there is a need for appropriate pacing. So pacing is movement in the class. You move from the back to the front. You move from the left to the right. And it is said that sometimes when you want to stress a point, you can stop. Say what you want to say, and then you move to the next place. So it is important not to be static in the classroom, but we try to move from front to back, left to the right. Sometimes it helps to find some of the children who will not be paying attention in the class. This is important. Then let us try to do proper pronunciations, correct pronunciations. Students, as they are, somebody defines them as food, ignorant food. Well, they are not ignorant food, but they make joke from certain things. So let us try to look for the right pronunciations. There are some words that you need to ask, or some things that you need to ask. But for all you know, some of the students know how they are pronounced. It is important if you are not sure, to plan with yourself, look for the right communication before we go to the class. You see, all these things we are saying, they are important because when they do something wrong to these young people, they believe in us so much that when you tell them something that is wrong, it may stick in them for years and they think it's important. Then the last one is it is important to use emphasis, emphasis, emphasis in importance. Sometimes some people will speak like parrots from the beginning to the end. No, in speaking and in teaching, it is important that we speak emphasis. We see the important things first of all. Let proper process indicate and time for the young people to, to process what we see. To process what we see. So proper process should be done with our teachers. And then it is said that when you want to make emphasis, as I said earlier, and you are having the thought, and then you say what you want to say, and you emphasize what to say, then you will. So these are some skills that you can read during explanations, during the activities that we have in our children, especially when it comes to explaining things to them in the classroom. Then the last phase is conclusion, lesson conclusion, lesson conclusion. What does it do? It does so many things. It helps to reinforce the key concepts that we have in it helps in laying emphasis on the mistake. It improves also the tension because at the end of the day, all that we have been saying, we have said so many things. So at the end, what am I thinking for? What is the big goal? And so when we meet them in a certain way in the graduation, it helps them to remember what we got that day. Introduction again, sorry, completion again provides lesson closure. It marks the end of the lesson. Those are some of the things that lesson for different people. But let's see what are some of the ways we can complete our lessons. One is by questioning and reflection. Maybe we can ask students to answer some questions. This is where you would want to um, assess them and see how far they have understood what you taught them. Then you would like to summarize. If you want to summarize what was done. So at the end of the lesson, you may say, so today we have been talking about the sacraments of the church. And when we realize that there are seven of them, then we make them one after the other, and then the lesson will come to an summary. So we make a brief summary of what we're talking about. Then you may want to engage them in certain activities. That could be puzzles, it can be quizzes in the form of a game. Okay? We can make them draw some mind map to make an imagination of a drawing what you were seeing. And people can be so artistic that you can initiate the discussion after all that they have received. What do they want to say about these business activities to conclude your lesson? You can be to conclude. And so coming to the end of the presentation, uh, I must say that teaching and learning activities are very important and they find this effective in the classroom. They find effectiveness in the classroom. And if they are used very well, if they are used very well, they promote active improvement, active inclusiveness in learning. Okay? And so it is very, very important. Um, Teaching and learning activities again improve personal failure, motivation, critical motivation, and critical thinking. Lastly, it prepares learning for the real life, prepares learning for the real life and future career. For us, these engagements will help in very important ways in making the children become Christians, the good people we wanted. I thank you very much for listening to me. Bye.